us.
Thank you. Actually, I was going to say, no, I'm kidding.
You're not even here for the podcast. You're just here for the photo, for the picture.
That's what I said. But I didn't even have time to do anything this morning. I had to be up and about very early.
Oh, wow.
I was like, oh, what am I even wearing? I was like, I told Marcus, can I slay? I was like, forget it. It'll be another day. But
so if you're not slaying, I don't know how people have no hope then when you show up.
When I show up, yeah. I could have gone an extra mile, but it was like, okay, simple goal. Let's go. Okay, let's start.
Yeah, good to have you. We already started, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Welcome to the podcast. Well,
thank you.
Yeah, so the Chini Maji podcast, Impact Africa Network, Mary Mwangi Data Integrated. It's been a long time coming. You and I connected first, like you said, I think maybe a year and a half ago.
Before you moved here.
Before I moved, yeah.
When you were doing your exploratory findings, if you were going to make it a place to be in Nairobi for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were trying to explore it.
Yeah, I was doing my groundwork, my market research to see if I could actually survive the Silicon Savannah.
Let's see what kind of guys are here. Check us out.
But yeah, so from the first time I met you, you're an enigma is how I would describe you. The first thing that stands out about you is just your positive, can-do, always smiling, positive energy that I see from you. And that's when I think about Mary, that's what I think about. So I guess my first question is, where does that come from? Is that tell me about that. Is that even a real thing? How do you do this? Especially being an entrepreneur, knowing how difficult and challenging it is. What keeps that smile on your face?
I don't know. I guess I've been smiling a long time. I don't know any other way not to smile. I mean, sometimes, the smile goes, but when I have to be my tough self. And it's not a very comfortable place for me. So I find the smiling place is more where I am more comfortable. And it's more me. It comes very natural to me. Okay. So the other ones, I really have to think through on how am I going to come out? How am I going to sound? How is it going to impact somebody else? When I have to try and be tough, I have a lot of considerations to take in, but when I'm being myself, I just flow.
Awesome. So you're mostly positive, like happy. Are you conflict avoidant? Or is that what I'm hearing from you? Or?
No, what I'm saying is when there is conflict, it just requires a bit more energy to deal with.
Yeah, I mean for everybody, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Do you think for you it's more than most people? How would you know?
I don't know, but maybe in some cases, but it's something I really have to work hard at.
Right.
I think even since I was a child, I was one of the kids that, if something happens to me 1 minute, the next minute I completely forget about it. Mm-hmm. And then I keep getting hurt so many times by, different things. Then after a while, I'm like, okay, how do I learn to deal with this just to make sure I don't put myself in that situation anymore?
So quickly trusting people and...
and I guess just looking too much on the positive side and forgetting everything negative as soon as it happens. So I just have always been like that. So it's harder to forget and live like that because you need those lessons.
Yeah, you need the lessons, but does that suggest that you develop kind of like an overly vigilant mindset that puts you in this low-grade stress zone? What's the alternative? How when you say learn from those lessons, then what? Like, how do you now show up in the world, or how do you imbibe that?
It's just that whenever you see it somewhere, then you're able to recognize it.
Yeah. And not just go in like, oh, rose-colored glasses and be like...
Yeah, hey, everybody's my friend. We live in La La Land and it's a happy world. No, none of that. But, in some cases, you do need to be more serious and life is a bit more serious. And so things need to be dealt with. Right. And you just need to recognize when that needs to happen.
When that's the moment. Awesome. Great. So, great way to kind of get started. Do some psycho analysis conversation here.
I know.
And so generally speaking, the podcast is always really for the people in the ecosystem to kind of know you, give your background, where you grew up, high school, whatever, just high level, and then also your journey to founding your company, your entrepreneurial journey, because maybe Data Integrated is not your first company. And actually, what we should do is do an introduction. So my bad. So Mary Mwangi, founder and CEO of Data Integrated, which is, how would you describe yourself? I've always struggled with this. Your company.
You're not the only one. Almost everybody I meet struggles with it. And in some cases is because we also evolve quite a bit within the organization from what was our original plan. When we first started, we wanted to be a purely fintech company that goes there and digitizes payments through automation of processes for SMEs. And so along the way, we have had to almost pivot to an extent where we've had to not just do the payment, but dig in a little bit deeper and look at what's below the payment for most businesses. Because what is it that they're selling? Where is their pain? In fact, this was brought up to me by one of the circles, the transport company. And they said, Mary, collecting of money is not even our biggest problem. Our biggest problem is the bookkeeping effect and how we are able to track that money up the chain. Yeah, not just post-payment, but even as it's being collected. You know, how they are. So you find that even most businesses, even though you're getting paid for assets that you're selling. You know, you're not just getting paid just to have money. And so going to think about just a payment system, you have to think about what is it that people are being paid for.
Inventory.
Yes, right. Like what's the asset? What is the value that people are paying for? And how is that protected? And you find that a lot of losses are coming in because of lack of controls on what people are paying for. So the resources that the businesses are selling or putting out to the customers don't have controls in place. They don't have systems in place. And so there's a lot of leakages going there. And you can apply it across industries when you're looking at it.
So some control mechanisms beyond just collecting a payment. How do I operate and run my business?
Right, especially the payment part of it. What is it? How do you control your resources that you're being paid for? So even public transport, that means your fares that you're collecting, or any other funds or payments that you're collecting. And then if you're a retail or an inventory-based system, that's what you're looking at. And then you're also looking at the processes, the resources that you're using to sell that product.
So what are you now? What do you guys do?
So basically now we come back to the big confusion. So to summarize summarize it really easily, we are a payment platform that has a concentration in public transport currently. That is what we're doing. So we become a fintech logistics company.
Okay, we're gonna dig into that a little bit because I don't want to go down those, the business kind of landscape part. We're going to dig into that a little bit because there've been some folks who've gone down this path before and didn't make it. Namely, it starts with a G.
Those are friends. That's bad things.
So Google did a run at this, right?
Yes.
With KCB and all this, and that didn't work out. So we'll unpack that a little bit further down the road, and you can give your opinion on that. But let's start with you, right?
Yeah.
So tell us who Mary Mwangi is, background, high school, career, entrepreneurial journey, those three things, and where you grew up, type of thing.
So if what I can describe myself as is actually, I could say I'm an entrepreneur. I grew up in Nairobi. I was born and raised in Kasarani. So my business actually started in Kasarani. I went to day schools all my life, through primary and high school. So I used a lot of the public transport, especially in high school. That's when pop culture was actually starting to hit in the matatus, and you had to wait, for the matatus to go 2 rounds so you can get to the latest, to the hottest conductors.
So
and all that
You
stuff.
grew up in that's the 90s time, right?
Yeah, now you see my age. I don't say that.
I'm dating you.
yeah, don't do that. But yeah, so looking at that, in our families, we had, family members owning public transport, owning matatus. And so to me, it's very natural to feel comfortable in that
space.
environment, in the space. And so one of the things that you could say as an entrepreneur when I first started, I was just trying to digitize payments for SMEs. Looking at then M-Pesa, which was just a transfer solution that people are just using for money transfers, and I thought this would be a great resource if for digitizing the local small businesses, the local traders and all that. And so we set up to build a point of sale systems around
the matatu.
No, just around small businesses.
Okay.
But then when we were doing this, we realized that, to really build something for retail, you needed a lot more resources. So we had just done the payment part of integrating a person into the system and cash, and build a small dashboard. And we're like, hi, we thought we had reached,
This
we
is
were
it. This
very
is what
excited.
you need.
Right.
This will change your life.
Yeah, and then we saw an advert in the papers that said, hey, Nairobi's trying to digitize public transport and everything. And we thought, hey, wait a minute. That device of ours, we can actually go and pilot in public transport.
So before we get into kind of like, and this is kind of what I guess, talk a little bit high level. I mean, because I know you're a returnee. You're one of those returnees that people love to hate.
Okay.
So talk about your journey. Like, here's went to high school, then I went to, I don't know, Kansas.
Okay, so what I
you
did is actually I finished high school and I wanted to do computers. But at that time there wasn't that many people doing programming and it was just starting. But I knew I didn't want to go to a secretarial college or nursing and any of that. I wanted to just try something different, and the newest thing and hottest thing at that time was programming. So,
and where does that come from? The need to actually, or the desire to do something different? Is that always been part of your?
I think I've always been some kind of rebel in
a
way.
I can see it.
You can see it. Yeah, so I think there was always that. Okay, not more rebel, but I was always adventurous. Okay. So I was always seeking new things, and at that time there were 2 computer colleges in town. But I couldn't hack it after I finished high school because there was too much, competition between that and trying to be hot and party and all that. So I went to India for a year.
All right, okay.
And in India, I did a bit of programming, and then I came to Kenya for holidays, and they said, oh, Mary, you can go to the U.S. At that time, the U.S. Embassy was just in town. Went there one afternoon, got my visa. So the next week, I was going to the U.S., and that's how I went. So when I went there, the school was a bit far. You needed to drive, the weather and everything. And
Which state?
I was in Kansas. Kansas City. It's actually in Missouri, the state, but the city was Kansas. And so I decided actually after my little stint in India that I better choose something more quiet and something that's going to tame me. And so I thought, let me get into accounting. And so I actually switched and did accounting.
I'm not gonna dig into. I'm not gonna dig into your India experience because
it was wild. But anyway, so after that, I finished that. Started working in banking. I got a job as a teller and started out as a teller. Worked for about 8 years or so in banking, doing different roles and with 3 different banks. And so I got a good exposure in terms of payments.
Any known banks? I mean,
no, actually, I did one of the banks in Kansas. I started with a credit union, which is basically a SACCO.
Pretty much, yeah.
It's a SACCO basically, SACCO, yeah. And the front office opened kind of SACCOs. So I did that, and then I learned, that's how I got my feet wet, and then I went in and did payments. Check clearing and payments, and then I went and did capital markets within the same bank. Then after that, I went to a small bank in Kansas, in one of the small towns.
Jeez.
And I did.
What an experience!
I know. That was a very good experience when I look back, because it gives you the whole view of how the financial industry works in terms of functions, because when you're in a small bank, you get to do all the banking. I was actually assisting the CFO, all the accounting of it.
Okay.
So I was able to see like how banks work, every part of it, how everything comes together. So I got quite a good understanding of that. I've worked for the city government, so I understand how counties and payments around that work.
City government in the U.S.
In the U.S.,
Okay.
yes, and then different organizations in systems, changing the systems, enterprise systems into legacy systems into enterprise systems. So I completely understand where problems come for small businesses. And then going to Kansas, in the middle of Kansas, in the small towns, I also watched how a lot of those small businesses had actually not made it. A lot of them were going out of business, and I believe that if they had automated, they might have survived.
So this is interesting because a lot of people who may have not been to a small town USA, would always assume that, the whole of the United States is kind of very automated, developed from a technological standpoint. So my corollary is I was in the Bay Area Tech Universe, but I also went to school in West Virginia, in a small town, University of Charleston, West Virginia, and I knew both worlds existed. The point I'm getting at here is it's interesting that even in the States, you're saying businesses went out of business because they did not have automated systems and their processes.
Yeah.
Wow, that's an interesting. So open that up a little bit in terms of, prove that in terms of maybe an example of where you saw that happening specifically.
My daughter used to go dancing in Missouri, and so we would go to this small town. There's a dance class right next to it. There was a few shops, and you found that after a while those shops actually were gone. They didn't survive. There was an eatery that closed. There was a donut shop. There was all these other there was antique shop, all those shops, and after a while the whole square that had those shops, they all closed.
Interesting.
And then when I was in Kansas, one of the things where the bank was, if you looked around, all those shops had also closed.
Had Walmart
at that time? That is when Walmart and Target were really picking up.
Right, got it.
And so people were going to Walmarts and Targets, and then that is where everybody now started shopping. You look at Kenya, we are looking at everybody is going to the Tuskies, everybody is going to the Carrefours, and all these other game shop and all these other big shops that are coming in. If you look at the small businesses as we know them, they might not make it if they don't digitize. Look at in town, when we first came, there was enough coffee shops around. Right now, most of the coffee shops are turning into Javas in town. You go to one side and that's where everybody's going. At the first place, nobody was believing you were going to be buying.
This is the Americanization of the consumer business landscape of Kenya.
And it's going to happen.
So let me ask you a question. Let me push back on this. Is this a question of digitization or just business strategy? Some business strategies just kick butt because I have an aggregated store that has much more traffic. It will just pull more feet into my Carrefour, right, than because people can get more stuff there, right? Is that a digitization problem, or it's just kind of like a strategy problem, a business kind of?
It's both.
Okay, tell me how you think a small business can survive that onslaught by digitizing.
Okay, let me tell you one thing. When you look at small businesses, and especially in the retail sector, people are just buying products and keeping them there. They don't have data to tell them what moves fast. Most of them don't have a good comparison on terms of what is a high margin, what is a low margin. They have a lot of dead stock that's probably not moving at all. And so, yes,
so business information is lacking.
Yeah, they don't have data to make better business decisions.
So, but here's the thing. So that might help move the needle to some extent, but it will not necessarily bring feet into your store if more people are going to, say, a big store, Carrefour or Walmart for that matter, right?
It might not, but if you're efficient enough, you also free yourself from being just in the store. Most of the people are staying in the store because it's hard to have someone who you trust collecting the money. Right. So mostly you find the husband, the wife, the niece, the nephew.
And you might also, to that point, you might also be able to expand online, right?
Yeah.
And have You don't have to have customers
You
coming
can
into
even
the
have
store.
more stores.
Right.
Think about it. You don't have to be in that one store. I have a cousin of mine, and he runs a big warehouse store. He cannot take a day off from his business, him or his wife, or when their kids are there, because someone has to be in control of the cash register.
How does automating? Listen, I think we're kind of
Yeah.
But so you this is your background. You saw these kind of had this broad experience from banking to government to small business operations and
To
seeing
large
how
businesses too.
to seeing how Walmart comes into town and disseminate. Now you're seeing the same corollary on the side.
Digitization, yeah.
So how did you? So none of this speaks entrepreneurship yet. There's no entrepreneurial
No,
angle
actually,
here.
okay. So what happens is, I was getting a lot of pressure because I've been in the U.S. for so long by my family to come back. My mom, you could call her an entrepreneur. She's run all kinds of businesses all through the years, and
She's a classic Kikuyu businesswoman.
Yes, she is actually. She has always been. And
I
grew
got
up with that. I grew up with that. So I grew up with the business. She tried the butcheries, the meat shops, the bars, the markets, all that
The whole
stuff.
thing.
Yeah, we tried that. So I grew up with that. We wake up, you go wash the shop, you go do this, you collect the money, you go do the accounting, the counting of the money, and you do all this stuff. So I grew up doing that. That's what I knew. And so coming back, I was like, what do I come back and do? And I figured, I don't want to keep a retail shop. I don't want to be in the shop trying to sell. And I kept saying, when I think of something to do, that's when I'm going to come back. And one time I'm driving and I think, hey, wait a minute, that M-Pesa thing, why don't you just come and automate and digitize it for the small businesses? But my idea of how we were going to do that, I thought we needed a cash register. I came from an accounting background, of course. So I'm all about keeping records and, accountability and everything and processes. So I wanted to make sure that that was built in. And that has taken a long time to get everything together. And then I actually created a business out of that. I thought I'd do this in 2 years and go back to the States and leave
So you
this
moved.
stuff going.
So you were driving where in the States?
In the States.
And then your epiphany, like I've got the killer idea, the
I
killer
know,
app.
that's exactly how it happened actually. I was like, I know now what I wanted to do. And I called my sister and I said, I think I know what I want to do. I said I'll come back to Kenya and live there when I know what I want to do. I want to come and digitize those small businesses and I want to use M-Pesa for their payments.
Boom,
And
like that.
yeah,
It just
that
came
was
out like that on the phone. You were clarity.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was it.
Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. I think Mike Tyson is going to say that. So go ahead. So now you pack your bags.
So now I wanted to do a proof of concept. Could we even print SMSs? How can the register work and everything? So I go to the local university. I enroll in a Kaufman class that they had on how to run a business, in Kansas City. Kaufman is from Kansas City. So the
Right.
University of Missouri had classes on it. So when they enrolled, I think it was a 6-week thing. And then I recruited a student from UMKC and in the computer electronics department, and we did a proof of concept so we could print SMSs from transactions because I wanted to make sure I could do that before I came.
So let me ask you a question. This is interesting. So you recruited a student, and this I think is your strength. I think this is one of your strengths. How did you recruit a student and say, what are we doing?
I went to the engineering computer department of UMKC and I said, I want a student who can help me prove this.
Did you pay them? What was
Yeah,
the
we
deal?
paid them.
Okay.
I paid them, but
Okay.
it wasn't much. But he was from India too, and so I explained to him what I wanted, and he did the proof of concept, and I was like, okay, we can go with this.
Okay.
And so from the class, I'd also learned that you needed to get a lawyer, a patent lawyer. So we patented the idea, did all the research, did all of that. I was like, okay, now I'm ready to come to Kenya. I got this. My sister said, oh, there's a lot of engineers in Kenya that can do this. I said, yeah, but we might need to make hardware. Yeah, they're there, just come. So
So did he? So let me just to kind of maybe even date this a little bit. Did he give you that proof of concept in a floppy disk, a CD-ROM, or was it in the cloud?
there were no floppy disks.
No. Okay. So you okay.
There were jump drives at least.
Okay, jump drive.
There were flash drives. So
It was floppy disk then.
yeah. So no, we did that. I got.
So
some
he
lawyers
gave you
and
the code in a jump drive.
Yeah, we just wanted to prove first that we could do it.
Okay, fair enough.
And then we did that.
So you
Yeah,
put that
he
in-
gave me all that. He gave me all the files. I think I saved them on my computer, and then I came back to Kenya.
Okay.
And then I had a friend who was at Kiridi then. I said,
Where?
Kiridi.
Kirji, what's that?
Kenya Industrial something.
Okay.
Kenya Industry and Research Development.
Okay.
Industry Research and Development. Yeah, something. It's a government part that's supposed to help us with developments and stuff. So he gave me a room and said I could go there. So I went there and I started. We put a few ads. I got to develop. We got one dev. We went around. He applied. He couldn't code though, but he was a very good buddy. He was the most optimistic person you could ever have.
So you needed.
I needed that.
He could code, but he was.
It was good.
Awesome.
So what we did is, we fed off each other's high energy.
So wait, so he applied for the engineering job,
Yeah.
but he couldn't code.
Yeah. So he said, Mary, I think we need someone else.
This is perfect.
Yeah, so we went and got someone else, and the guy we got, he was phenomenal. He was amazing. I think he was super bright, and we were able to prove, but we were working on hardware. We were still trying to prove our concept on how this hardware thing will come together.
So what is this hardware thing? It's like a cash machine. What is it?
It's a device that we wanted to print SMSs. Remember, SMSs at that time were just transferring peer to peer. So we wanted to put it in the cash register, not just use your phone, so we can have a back-end report of the SMS transactions, and then we could also print the receipt and give out to the clients whenever they bought. So we couldn't find a device like that.
So this is basically extending M-Pesa to printable and back office.
Yes, that's what we were doing.
Got it.
This was in 2012.
Wow.
So
Super early. Love it.
I know we were too early. Sometimes ideas are too early and you just have to wait for the market to catch up.
True.
So we did that, and then once we got everything, proof of concept, the stuff was working, then we went to see how would we give it to a shop. Then we went to this shop, and they had 4 devices. They had
So this
how are they going to add another one?
So,
What are they
so
gonna
Mary,
pay
let
for?
me ask you a question. This is very interesting. So you come with your proof of concept. You hire a couple of engineers. One is just a positive energy guy.
Yeah, that's everyone needs that. By the way.
Yeah.
Every entrepreneur needs one of those.
One of those guys. But you've not gone and done your market research to even figure out how they would use the product, which is okay. This is what you learn. So,
No, we knew how they could use the product.
okay.
But not, like I said, I was thinking of the very small businesses and everything, the local ones, the local shops who didn't have a system at all.
Right. So maybe that's not how they could use the product. You knew how they could use the product. You didn't know,
My market size.
or even the current landscape, right? Competitively or options wise.
No,
Talk
we
about
didn't know. Okay, I didn't do
Market
market research.
That's what I'm getting
So
to.
now, market research, we kind of know what people want, but they don't have a system. So we are thinking of your local, your real local
Kiosk?
local
What are we talking about here? Kiosk?
Yeah, the local shop. The
Where you go buy one milk and bread?
yes, those types of things, but they are brick and mortar.
Ah.
They had to have been brick and mortar.
So they're not a kiosk then. They're the next level.
The next level above a kiosk.
Okay.
Then we went to the mall, and in the malls, Thika Road Mall, TRM, I think.
Yeah.
That was my first mall to go into. No, it wasn't, but anyway, they just built it and everything, and so we're walking around the shop. Remember in Kasarani? So I'm walking around the shop, and we find these devices, and we're like, okay, wait a minute. These guys need a device that does more than one thing.
Okay.
So
the one with 4 devices, there's one shop
4
that
functions. Yeah, it had 4 devices. It had a cash register, it had an ETR machine, it had a phone that they were using for M-Pesa, it had a credit card machine on there.
Wow.
And then now you were gonna add a 5th device to them.
And what was the 5th device going to replace?
It was gonna replace the phone, that didn't have anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so at least you could replace the phone.
You could replace the phone, but they weren't gonna buy just that for the phone. We
Right.
didn't think that was a good market push for us.
The value proposition wasn't
Yeah,
compelling
it
enough.
didn't.
Yeah.
So we thought, hey, wait a minute, let's add credit card to this thing.
Okay.
And all this other stuff. So
Expand the value prop.
Right. So I called a friend. I said, hey, I want to meet Visa because I have this device. So we take a, rugged, funny device thing and prototype thing, if you want to call it. And we take it to Visa, and the lady, we call this big meeting with Visa, and the Visa guys come out and they say, hey, Mary, is your device PCI and
Compliant.
EMVs compliant? I was like, what are
What?
those? I had no clue. So, so the lady said, just go back, and when you get
The meeting
just
is
come
over.
back. Yes. So that was a quick lesson. So we're like, okay, guys, how do we get this PCI and DMV thing done on this device? We Googled it, and we found that, we needed a few $100,000, which we didn't have. Then we're like, okay, now there goes our business plan.
So forget credit cards.
Forget that stuff. And then we're like, okay. And then one of our friends said, you know what, guys, why don't we just find something in China? Why don't we just find something in China, and then we just ask them if they can customize? Because the biggest thing is we just wanted to print the SMS, and the device is currently in market, couldn't do that. And then we wanted to combine all these other things, and then we find something in China, we buy that has all the certifications and all that. So we went
That's
into
PCI
research
compliant and all that stuff.
EMV and everything.
So
and
you
then
can buy an
provide us stuff.
off-the-shelf PCI compliant device. Is that what we're getting at?
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
But now you have to add now all the other development, because remember, we wanted a dashboard, we wanted it to be able to send information to the back office, and then we wanted to do all these other integrations that we wanted to do with, the M-Pesas, the Airtel money, and all of that. We want to integrate everything in this one device. So we needed to be able to develop on it. So we wanted a device that was kind of blank. It has an SDK, so we could now add to it. So we found one, we worked with it, and then just when we proved we could integrate M-Pesa and everything, we saw the advert in the papers about transport, and we're like, hey, I think at this point we can go and test this.
Wait. So now, Mary, this is. I want the audience to get it. So you are first of all looking at shops, then you see an advert in the newspaper of transport, and you're like, I'm gonna go after this.
No, you know what? Okay, we had developed up to the point, but we didn't have an inventory. We needed an inventory to take it to the shop.
What do you mean by inventory?
It needed an inventory system where
Oh,
now they're
okay.
able to see that. But we figured we can easily put a ticket in this device without having to worry about creating a full inventory system.
So now so you had reached a point where you realized, God, we gotta build this inventory system. The market was asking for more than what you had.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how many conversations did you have to get to that conclusion? I mean, we don't have the whole story.
We talked to a few shops. We went, like at the malls. We did look at that. But also when I looked at, my mom runs a bar, and looking at it, I knew every morning I would go in and do the bookkeeping of what were the sales last night and everything. And I was like, I just need to automate this stuff. Now, I knew that was required, and I knew what it takes to do all that. It's a long process to build that system. And so at that point, it's like, okay, we need to pilot something just to see that we're on the right track.
So now you see the transportation ad. What was the ad saying?
There was a meeting at KICC, and this Matatu thing was going on. So I called my sister, I said, do you know anybody in the industry that can get us this? So she says, yeah, actually, we know someone who can introduce it to MOA. MOA, Matatu Owners Association.
Okay.
So we got introduced, then they invite us, then we go there, and then I look at what they're trying to say. This is when Google and everybody now is coming, and they're talking about how they're going to launch this product, and they're trying to get the buy-in now from everybody. But there's no interoperability, so I said, so I stood up and I asked a question, and I said, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. How you want me to buy 5 different cards, and then that I will have to have money, and then I have to decide which Matatu I go in if it has my stuff, my card or anything. I said that doesn't work.
This is interesting. So basically, there are many players in the space. Each one was offering a unique card, and there goes her phone. Each one was offering a unique card.
Yes.
That was the play,
Yeah.
right? And everybody was competing for the market, and they were not thinking about the customer, like you just said.
Yeah.
Like everybody, now I would have to have 5 cards to climb a Matatu.
Right.
Then ask them which card they use.
And then have money in each and every card just in case
That's
you get
ridiculous.
into the Matatu.
What the hell is
it just
this?
didn't make sense. So I stood up and I asked, and because you know there was all those people over there, I think some of the people in the industry, you know, the owners and the drivers and all that, were a bit intimidated by the whole setup. So nobody was
Google
asking.
was in the room.
I don't know. It looked like
KCB
quite a
was
big
in the room.
setup. I think they were intimidated. So when I asked the question, and I was sitting in the audience, after that, now everybody wanted to come and talk to me.
Hey, well done.
So I guess it was a good way to market myself, and that's how I actually started getting contacts
So
from
you
the
started building a
public
relationship because you basically asked the question that everybody had in their minds,
Yes.
but they were too scared to ask.
I think so.
Awesome.
So now after I asked that, then I got a lot of contacts, and everybody wanted to buy our system, and they wanted us to work with us. And then, so we decided we were going to try and build something that could read all these other people's cards on our device. But now we didn't have the cards.
So you're going to aggregate.
Yeah, all the cards into our device.
one
Remember,
device.
most of these people, they hadn't done most of the development locally. They had just got POSs from somewhere, but we had done most of ours almost from, you know, the SDK level, which is almost from scratch. So we were very flexible in our development.
And extensible.
Yeah,
to
so we
work
could
with
do
anyone.
that,
Yeah,
and we
that's
had the
awesome.
experience. We've been working on this for a while, so we just didn't see the ad and start developing. We'd been developing, then we saw the
Right.
ad and we wanted to try something.
responded to a
So we
need,
were
yeah.
far more developed than anybody else in the market that had a payment system for public transport.
They were being opportunistic. You guys were kind of already trying to solve a problem. You
And we
were
had a back end, remember? We
Yeah.
had a back end, they didn't have.
This is so emblematic of Kenya, man. Like, in this market, people don't go deep, right, into solving problems. They just chase opportunities as they show up, take
Right.
stuff off the shelf, and say, "Hey, this is a nice new shiny object. You can use it."
Right.
So it worked out for you in the sense that you guys were.
I mean, it could have worked out, but it didn't work out very well because after that, then they brought in new requirements that we didn't meet. You need to have a bank letter, a central bank letter that later turned out to be not real. So
Okay, now we're going deeper into the
that's
Kenyans.
Kenyan, the regular Kenyan story, you know. But afterwards, you know, the bus company said, actually, Mary, our problem is not cashless. It wasn't. The biggest problem was how they were operating. So they requested that we build them an operating system.
What does that mean, operating? Which part? I mean, like.
The management, how the circles operate, how they operate the business, how they manage the buses, how they pay each other, how they collect.
So it wasn't at
payments
the,
and
it wasn't at the point of custom. It's not at the customer point. It's not at the.
The
it was
customer
not,
point was not even their biggest problem.
That's not the problem.
It wasn't their biggest. It was a problem, but it wasn't their biggest problem.
Right.
If you asked most circles and most businesses, it was just how they were operating and the management of it.
So here, this is interesting because SACCOs are a relatively recent phenomenon in the transportation game. Because when you and I were in high school, I don't remember SACCOs.
They were not there. It was brought by Mishuki rules.
Right.
He said that, you know, buses have to organize, and I think they're required to be at least 30 buses to form a circle.
Interesting.
And so now, those circles now act like small MFIs, microfinance institutions. They lend to each other, they have savings, they collect insurance.
So it's not even
they
about
collect
transportation.
management. No, these are investment vehicles.
Got it.
Public transport circles are investment vehicles.
All right. So
They
now
just
two different
decide-
businesses right now.
They just decide to invest in public transport. Some of them even
Oh.
have other arms where they buy land and they cut it up. So these are actually, when you look at public transport circles, you need to look at them as investment vehicles.
That's actually an insight. That's it. That's very
Yeah.
interesting. You
They really
clearly know your market. So go on. So now where are we at now? What's next? So they come to you. You're given this all run around about you have to have all these new requirements. You're chasing this thing, trying to kind of make it work.
Yeah, and then
What
we
was-
realized just the politics of it wasn't something I was prepared to do. And anyway, it wasn't our core business. The trouble was too much. I was like, that's not even our core business. Let's get back to where we started with the retail and everything.
And this
so
is how
we-
many years into the thing? So this is 2012. Where are we now? What?
No, this happened in 2014, 2015, by the time this stuff is happening.
Okay.
So we, you know, the politics of cashless and the buses and everything, we said, okay, guys, let's let these guys run with it. We don't need to be in it. Let's get back to our core business, which was building solutions for
Small
businesses. And that's what we did. We went back to do that. And then the bus companies came back to us and said, no, Mary, actually, we liked your system. You guys just didn't get the letter from Central Bank, but can you please build for us this system? because we think you can.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when we looked and said, okay, we can
So
do
they
this.
pulled you back to the
Yeah. So now we were pulled back to the public transport, which I wasn't even planning to be in. But they said this is a solution which worked for us, because now at that time we were having issues getting bank partnerships to get our credit card part running. We were having trouble getting our ETR certificate from KRA so we could do ETR on our device. So it's like, okay, all we have to do is create payment receipts and a dashboard for them to collect money among each other so we can start selling this. So we were like, okay,
So
it's a
you
low-hanging fruit.
You didn't need all these other
No, we didn't.
infrastructure
No.
kind of
No, we
certification
didn't.
thingies.
No.
And that's so. Why? Question. Why is it? Why do you think it was so hard to get those things?
Kenyan issues. I think we've tried to work with at least 4 banks previously, and each one fell apart almost at the last minute. Some of them we integrated, we were almost ready to start, and they wouldn't. But what I think with the banks, the issue was their infrastructure wasn't ready for outside integrators.
So it was more technical than political, or in some cases more.
I think it was more technical, I would actually say. If you look at how banks are made and their infrastructure and how they built their systems, they hadn't foreseen where they need a third-party integrators. Right. They had not created the APIs and all of that. So by bringing someone in who they don't know very well, they're exposing themselves and their whole banking system to an outsider. So you would really have to be known and have all this clout, and a lot of trust for you to get in. But at that point, I didn't realize that, and you just have had to build this relationship.
So let me ask you a question. So, okay, looking back, who were you talking to at the banks? Or were you talking? It sounds like you're talking to the technical people.
No, I would talk to the business people mostly.
Okay.
First, you have to get the contracts ready and done. And then they would tell you, okay, you can just start even with the technical as we clear this. And what I've learned is there's no bank, the contract and everything that will clear and get to the end in less than, at the minimum, 18 months.
So let me ask you a question. What if you had a relationship with the CEO?
I did, in some of them.
Oh, and it still didn't work?
No.
Jesus. So how do you get anything done? 18 months you might be dead.
Actually, some of it took us several years. You could know the MD, you could know anyone, but just the systems aren't ready.
Oh, it was okay.
You know what I mean?
Software
but
upgrade,
also the bureaucraticness of banks is quite intensive, and nobody wants to take responsibility.
Got it.
I'm the one who brought this person in, and then there's hacks. We're having all these issues right now.
Career risk and stuff. Yeah.
I don't know if you know, but the Kenyan banking system has a lot of security issues right now. And it just exposes just how vulnerable the banks are. Right. And you can now kind of understand.
From a fraud kind of penetration standpoint.
Right. If you open gates, who comes in? Right. How do we track? They don't have systems for that.
Yeah, that's so true, because if you look at just InfoSec space is massive, right? I mean, there's so many players, and it is one of those things in technology that continuously grows because it's whack-a-mole, right? You're trying to kind of hold this thing back, right, or protect your assets, but the hackers are always constantly finding new ways in, and technology is evolving. So because I've worked in information security before myself, and I kind of know the industry, and I've also worked in privacy, and I always would think, oh, Jesus Christ, even the most sophisticated financial institutions, they spend a lot of money on this stuff, but even them, they're vulnerable in the States. I mean, and I was thinking, now Kenya, where are we? Because I know, like you're describing, people kind of are legacy in a sense. So I'm not surprised, I guess, is my point about the vulnerability.
Yeah, it's actually quite bad right now. And so when you're looking at it, getting into fintech in itself has a lot of barriers to entry. And then transport also has a lot of barriers to entry.
Well, let me ask you this. Fintech seems to be, when you say has a lot of barriers to entry, unpack that a little bit, because it seems to be a very hot industry. And fintech is broad, right?
Yeah.
So how do you think about it when you say barriers to entry? Okay,
so what you're seeing a lot of growth in fintech right now is the loans. The immediate loans, and you get this.
Fruit,
those are not so difficult because you're sending money out and all that. But what we're talking about is the integration of payments, the core banking system itself. And that's an issue because everything in the bank, this is like their arteries, this is their heart, this is where everything beats. It needs to be protected.
So you know what this is interesting because maybe this begs for them to be disrupted, man, because they're not evolving fast enough. And I don't know, why can't we have? And it's interesting because I just saw this on Twitter. This startup that's just I guess gone from stealth mode to public facing. They have built a bank to rival for startups in the US. So if you're a startup, you can get an online account. So they're solving this banking problem for startups specifically, for small businesses, and they are rivaling a very established, obviously, industry, but a specific niche in that industry. There's a bank called Silicon Valley Bank that basically is the bank for startups, right? And this thing called Mercury.co is going after that space, right? With a new offering as a startup. Question for you. Can you do a similar approach in Kenya?
I don't know if you would go to the startup space, first of all, because I don't know if there's enough funding.
No, what I'm saying
But I think you can do that with other industries. You can actually look like, just take, for example, what we're trying to do with public transport, right? Basically, what we're giving them is almost like the startup banking you're talking about. We're giving them a platform where now they're able to manage the microfinance, the loans, and whatever else services that they're giving out.
But this is a system. What I'm saying, what this startup is doing, they are becoming the bank, a digital bank with no branches. So they are replacing Silicon Valley Bank, which is a legacy. They don't have a bunch of branches, but they're digitizing everything. Can you go after the digitization of the banking, not being not the supplier of the platform, being the thing, being the bank?
You can, and this is why
I don't think they'll let you.
Yes, you can. There's actually a license you need to get. It's the same one that Safaricom does, the MNO one. That's the closest you can get. In the back end, unless you get a full banking license, you'll still need to deposit your money in a bank. But you can do the whole lump sum.
The backstop would have to be some bank, some third party.
Not
bank.
the operations of it.
But
you can do that. You know, just like banks also have to deposit a certain reserve with the central bank and all of that.
So who would be your backstop bank?
You'd have to identify which one is
So
easier to work with.
Okay, I guess what I'm getting at here, and this is a good point you make, because can you just be a bank but just go digital?
You could, but
from scratch.
You would have to apply. The resources are very high, and their qualifications
Capital
are quite high.
requirements
Yes,
are high.
they're very high, and that would be very high also. Think of it like, what does M-Pesa do? M-Pesa does a lot of banking itself. But in the back, it still requires a bank. It's either backed by KCB or CBA.
Right.
And so itself as a bank, then it would need to get a banking license.
But in a global world, and maybe this is the realm of Bitcoin and blockchain thingies now we're getting into, because we are basically captives of the legacy financial infrastructure. There's no reason why things are the way they are. People just decided, here's how they're going to be, and now there's no reason why we actually have things are the way they are. Seriously. Because why do people go to banks? People go to banks because largely they are the ones that are there, right? There's no alternative. So in a sense,
but you'd still be a bank. So you just
still
do
be a bank
banking in a different way.
It's an alternative because...
So what you just don't want is a brick and mortar bank?
Well, I guess
the old legacy system that goes around the bank?
And the challenges they're bringing to entrepreneurs like yourself to actually partner with them, do a bunch of stuff that you need.
But
they seem to be in the way.
It's not the bank that's doing it. It's a requirement from the regulators, which is the central bank.
But the bank also has the technical challenges where they can't integrate with you because all these things.
They couldn't in the beginning, but now you're getting a lot of banks creating APIs. You know, look at what did Equity Bank do with FinServ.
So you're happy
They're
with
creating.
So you're happy with the current infrastructure bank, which is.
I'm not saying I'm happy, but I'm just saying there is a lot of improvement. I think there's still a long way to go for it.
We're on the same page.
But what I'm saying is also in the end, I don't think it should be so much the bank, but the system running behind it.
But there's also the system is one thing. Then there's the just the way they do things, the legacy thinking,
That is actually, I have friends who are working for the bank, and they say because they've worked for the bank, they're seeing gaps, and they know they want to get into entrepreneurship, and they
To
know
solve
where
those problems.
Yeah. So I've had actually people that I've interacted with through the years since I've been here. About four of them have quit working for banking, trying to resolve some of those issues. But I think sometimes we need bigger support than there is, especially in the fintech space, other than lending. If you're coming into payments and solving some of those,
Structural,
yeah.
cultural,
Okay, here's
operational.
the thing. Let's just take a step back. Let's talk about why are we where we are for most of the banking system, the companies that we're trying to do in tech and all of that. And you find that most of them, what they're trying to actually resolve is an infrastructure setup. And that's what we're trying to do. If you look at public transport, what are we trying to do? We're trying to build the infrastructure that will run this system digitally. So to build that requires time, a lot of knowledge, a lot of experts. Some of it we can do it on ourselves. We are looking out to partnering with some partners like Microsoft, Google, and all these other bigger companies, that know and have done this, InterSwitch, and all those other guys who come in and bring their expertise to us, and they're saying, Mary, yeah, we can help you move to this next level. But if you're looking for those kinds of experts in this region, they're just now arriving. We didn't have them locally. So it's not just funding that's a problem, it's also the skills to sometimes industry specific that actually realize that what you guys need to build is probably even something that hasn't been built out there because it existed.
Right.
It existed before.
Right.
So you guys are starting from scratch and
Right.
now building that so that all these other fintechs and all these other companies can come
Right.
and be able to bring now their apps and everything
On top of that.
Now that is
So it's platform development, infrastructure,
yes.
ecosystem, completing that whole circle, because now you're building a product that's almost like an island unto itself,
yes.
and it can't work in the existing environment.
There's just nothing to hold it down there.
Yeah. Wow, that's good stuff. Listen, I mean, you and I can talk forever.
I know.
And I have some other questions that I wanted to ask you as we kind of work towards wrapping up over here. So challenges of being, I think we've kind of gone through some of these, challenges of being an African founder. Maybe we haven't talked about that, but African founder and a female founder. I mean, maybe take one at a time.
Being an African founder, the challenges I would say is in the beginning, there were challenges being an African founder. I think for right now, it's just trying to fundraise. The usual story, money is going elsewhere and all that. But also, I don't want to blame it on me being an African founder. I also think I wasn't ready yet for the systems and everything that's been required. We didn't put that in from the beginning.
So there's two sides to it. You're saying there's the fact that you're an African founder, which is a thing, right?
Yes, yeah.
But there's also the fact that you're not ready to actually absorb capital.
Yeah, and that is true, not to the level that you want. And sometimes we will take that, and being an African founder, you take that, but you understand the African problem, and you're taking funds from people who don't understand the problem from an African side. So it kind of takes away your control of the product you want to build, because people are going to move it to something they're more familiar with.
Did that happen to you?
I haven't taken any funding yet, so it hasn't yet. But it is a danger. It's a real danger. So when I say sometimes you're not ready yet, you really have to define your product to where someone from outside who is giving you funds will actually understand your product. We started with this conversation saying, Mary, I don't understand what you do anyway. It's a big problem. You need to explain it.
The reason why I don't understand what you do is because you do too many things.
But that's what I'm saying. But as this stuff comes together, it's probably too early for people to come in and understand exactly what we do. And so if you're not in the industry, you're not working with this every day, you're not seeing it. You will tell me, Mary, just concentrate on this, but that can't survive on its own without these other parts. And so if I take money early, I'll be forced to just concentrate on that.
And you have been, because I remember that's the first thing when I thought about when I met you, I was like, wow. And even, you met Kane, who is a good friend. And we were just like, wow, Mary, like you are doing a lot of stuff at the same time. In your mind, you knew the story. You could connect the dots in your mind,
Yes.
right? Which is the most important thing because you're
Yes.
the entrepreneur.
Right.
And yeah, so
And now it's coming together, and people are like, wow, yeah, this is what we've been looking for. I was talking to other people in the industry, people that want a partner, and they're like, yeah, Mary, this is the type of solution we're looking for.
but to be fair, you've also evolved in terms of have you stopped doing some things that you were trying to do before?
We finished them.
Oh, she's like, we finished them. I love Mary. She's awesome. Uh-huh.
We got
You've
them where we
completed
needed
the
them to be.
Okay. But you were going after the other thing. Okay. This is great. So people are not ready to. So I guess the message there is you may not, you may, if you absorb capital too early, it could be problematic. And you probably can't even absorb capital anyway. So it's a chicken and egg scenario here.
And people will want to give you money. Believe me, they will. And people are taking money. But they might want you to create something they know.
Got it.
But not something that's solving your problem.
Got it.
Well, you know what is required.
Not your
to
problem,
solve.
the problem you.
Yeah, the problem you're trying to
You're
solve.
trying to
You
solve.
know what is required. That if you had this money with no pressures from outside to show something that everybody understands, you will actually solve the problem.
But here's the thing, on the other side too, right? It's like how many of, what's the level of just execution readiness are our local entrepreneurs? I know there's some brilliant ones, but execution readiness, that just discipline to execute and take capital.
I think a lot of them would be if they have the resources early. The problem is when you have to keep bootstrapping and you don't know what, and you have to please people.
You have to survive, basically.
You have to survive, but you also have to, keep creating and solving your people's problem.
Mm.
I had some lady, I think I went for a drink with, and they said they were trying to solve something around rabbits.
Mm-hmm.
Then they realized that rabbits in itself wasn't going to do that, so they needed to bring in more, more animals, more
Chickens.
chickens,
And more livestock.
Actually, I think they went for seafoods and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But you see, they evolved out of that. But the problem was in the beginning. But then they come out to the market and they do that. But then by the time they are gonna get funding about something like that, it's someone who's gonna say, yeah, I eat fish. So I can understand I don't eat rabbits. So there's no market. But then it depends. Can both exist? You have to be one vertical. I don't know. To me, it depends on what you're trying to do. So if you're taking money, what is your real vision? How far does it take you away with it? Are you still excited about it? They were very happy and excited about moving away from the rabbits to the seafoods and the delivery.
Would you invest in that business?
Which one?
The one you're talking about?
I think so. I kind of believe the people that were actually, moving to that, and they convinced me that, they knew what they were doing. It was something they're going to continue with it. I think I was reading something the other day that they said when you're coming in as an entrepreneur, you're getting people coming in to build. Some people are building to exit,
Mm-hmm.
other people are building for the long term.
Mm.
And what happens is, like they always say, you align yourself with who the investors are. Why are they there? Do they want something that moves quickly
Mm-hmm.
for their sake to exit?
But,
They want something that sustains and solves the problem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, at the end of the day, the investor is investing usually to exit, to get their money back, right?
To get their money back.
For
But some
liquidity.
people might get their money back without even exiting.
Sure, yeah, and you have to look at different structures for that. So, female founder, any challenges being a female founder specifically that you can point to? Or you're too positive
Yeah.
to even see the downside?
I do.
Mm-hmm.
I think if I was a female founder, it probably
If you were or you are? If you are
Yes,
not.
I am. Okay, I never think of myself as a female founder, but
That's your secret.
I don't know. I don't think I ever see I've always been around women entrepreneurs, women businesses.
So you never really thought about this. Maybe this is not even a question that's relevant to you at all.
It is to an extent of when I go to try to get those bank partnerships.
Mm.
I think if it was male, maybe
Mm.
it might have moved faster.
Mm.
That's how I sometimes tend to think.
Okay, let's move on. So the other one is local cultural weaknesses as an ecosystem, as a people, in the context of business. What are some of the weaknesses that exist?
We don't support each other enough.
Say that again?
We do not support each other enough.
Talk about it. Tell me about that.
I
Give me an
feel
example, or just expand on that a little bit because it's so important.
What I look at is I will be out into a place that I could easily use your service, right? Or help you build up yourself so I can use that service. But I will go out and shop for someone else because we won't even have that discussion. I was talking to someone the other day, I said, I feel like Kenya lost its Africanness.
True.
You know, you're your brother's keeper.
Right.
I feel like that is missing from a Kenyan culture.
You know what? I try and encapsulate this and understand it. I've been trying to kind of do this for a while, and that's why I always ask this in the podcast. You know, I call it Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Right? This is this character who had two personalities, schizophrenic. One, he's so pleasant and awesome, and the other one is a psychopath, right? And in the social setting, we're super nice to each other. You know, if there's a tragedy, we are there for each other.
We love to be each other's keeper when there's a tragedy.
On the social, yeah. But when it comes to the business thing,
when you're building each other up, we're not there.
We're not there. What happens? The same person.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So, in fact, there's undermining going on.
Jesus Christ. It's like an epidemic of craziness.
Yes.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, we need. This is a very important thing. Then the other thing, so I guess strengths. I guess maybe cultural strengths.
Cultural strength. I think we're very positive people.
Optimistic.
We're very optimistic, and we are carefree. When I look at Kenyans, as much as the culture works against us, it also works for us. The lack of culture too much. We don't have too much baggage.
Too many constraints culturally.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
So it's a double-edged sword.
It is. It really is. So we are easy to flow. We're easy to move. We're easy to adapt.
Yeah, that's true.
But also the same thing. Also,
there's lack of rootedness.
Yes, but I don't know which one we'd rather be.
Interesting. Okay. Lessons learned in your entrepreneurial journey. What would you do different looking back? What are some of the things you do different?
I would not do. Public transport would not be my key then.
Got it. Okay.
I would push other things. I think we would have moved faster if we didn't do public transport. But then I feel that as much as it's a needed product, and as much as we understand it, it does have its constraints to a startup as the first product you want to put out there.
Got it. Perfect. So you would not do that now.
To be my first thing.
Other than now strategy, what are the lessons? Just general lessons, not specific industry lessons.
Hiring.
Talk about it.
I'm not the best at hiring.
Because you hire positive people who can code.
Yes. I'm a bit more emotional, and I think we do a better job when I know most of my staff who are a bit more, who can easily to distance themselves from certain things. I think they are more objective, and whenever I involve them, it's always a better job. When I come into the management and admin stuff, mostly I don't have my tech family there for me, so mostly I was the one doing it. I think I made a few mistakes. In sales too, I think I haven't been very good at it, so I know I suck at hiring.
At least you know your
some people, yeah. But notice that being said, we have wonderful people that we've hired, and I just love my team. It's my other family.
How big is your organization right now? How many people?
We are about 32 now. We have a lot of interns too, and we are.
I hope you pay your interns.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, because there's a
We actually pay. I saw that.
You saw that crazy
I wanted to jump in and say we always hire interns. We make sure they have enough. In fact, most of our interns that we hired that had dropped out of school, since we started paying them, have been able to pay back their way back to school.
That's awesome. We actually have lunch for our interns and we pay them.
We do breakfast and lunch for everyone in their office.
Well done. Awesome. Congratulations. Yeah. That's great. Vision 2030. What's your Vision 2030 for Silicon Savannah? Where do you see this thing being in 2030?
I want us to build a great ecosystem. And I think we're doing it. I think if you look, the hubs are more. We have a lot of hubs coming up.
But what's the end result? What's the great ecosystem means what specifically?
Great ecosystem means talent, it means experience, it means better products, it means more automations for the local businesses. It also means I believe in ourselves that we can do this. And it also, gives us a bit of bragging rights.
Awesome. So I think if I was to pull that all together, that should manifest in wealth. We're building.
Let me tell you, I was in Lagos with the Google Launchpad.
Oh, you were at the Launchpad? Yeah.
I was at the Launchpad, and it was lovely, and I love Lagos. And most people say they didn't because of the heat, but I like the heat, and the sunshine makes me happy. So I was there, and I was looking at the structures that they built, and you can feel the heartbeat of Lagos. You can feel they're moving. And in Kenya we're moving, but not at the same speed.
Yeah.
Not at the same speed.
Yeah.
But to me, it was so lovely to be in an African city and see just how much it has changed, even in the last 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah.
And I am looking at Kenya and knowing that we will be transforming ourselves into that. We can cut out the whole corruption stories and the sad stories, but I believe if we can get most cities up there, a few hundreds of them, that'll be great.
Yeah, I mean, building great companies,
Owning.
Yes, you can. Yeah, actually, that's true because you can build and not own. You can build and not own. Hello.
Yes.
Jumia went public.
That's what I'm talking about. So African companies need to be owned by Africans.
Yes, talk about it.
And that is exactly what we're saying. We're empowering businesses so they own.
Yes, and this is why this is central to why I moved back from the States. And a lot of times people misunderstand why I've heard people say, why would you move back from the States, Silicon Valley, and so on and so forth. You know what? For me, I had a great career. I mean, I could have written that thing to the sunset, but you get to a point in your life where you're like, dude, I want something bigger, something more meaningful. And to be fair, as a black person, you have a ceiling on your career in Silicon Valley. 1 or 2 people can be lucky, right? But that's not systemic. How many VCs do you know in Silicon Valley? How many people who've exited in companies do you know who are black in Silicon Valley? Pretty much none, for the most part. I moved back because of this thing. Because I knew we had the talent, we had the market, we had the opportunity, and I could see that we were losing the digital scramble for Africa.
That's a problem.
Massive.
People are not seeing that.
I saw
a lot of people are not. No, yeah, you and I see it.
Yeah.
We've been out there. We
you.
understand. But locally,
they're not seeing it.
And globally, there's an urgency to it. But most of us want to invest in land and houses.
And we don't want to help each other. We see it as a competitive thing. So there's multiple things.
It's a house, it's a building, and you ask any Kenyan investor, they will run to put their money there.
But even okay, so that's true. And I believe there's also capital that's looking to come in. But the other thing you said, we don't work together.
No, we don't. Especially Kenya. West Africans are doing a better job.
We don't work together. This is so sad. Okay. So Vision 2030, we're going to build companies that we own that are big and awesome. That's where we're going. We have the talent, we have what it takes.
And our talent will be out there.
Awesome. Final kind of parting shots to tips and final words to any young entrepreneur who, or otherwise, or old, whatever. What are some of the advice you would give to somebody who's listening to this, who's an entrepreneur in the trenches, trying to make it happen?
Okay, what I would say is create a product that solves a problem that you really believe in.
Awesome.
Do something that you really believe in. When I wake up in the morning, no matter how great, no matter how broke I am, no matter how bad things are going, I still have this hope in what I'm trying to do, in what we are trying to do.
Which is what specifically for you?
Which is to digitize and empower small businesses.
You know what, Mary? With that, we'll stop because that's the first thing you said. That's why you came back, and you're still doing that.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being on the Chini Magic podcast. That was a great one.
Thank you.
Awesome.